Hello to everyone, this is Vishal, and again we are new session of the day that is related to the binding and state. So, in my previous sessions, as we discussed about how we can use the simple elements, and then we have done with all kind of list types on. We have created the list group, so many things in the previous one. And on the same sequence, today we'll discuss about the state binding examples and how we call the API, and we get the response in Swift API. So because of we have to cover the MVVM approaches, so basic things we required for that. So first we discuss about today the state and binding, and then see few examples on that. So, as I told many times in the state, that it is a property wrapper used to declare a piece of data that is owned by a specific view. Means if you want to go for the local private states within a single view, so we can use it. So just like if you want to take an input from the text field and then use for the same view, so you can use blindly that state. So that's a very simple, and we already done the examples with that. I will show you the practical one more time. And what about the binding? Binding means you can see that two-way communications, or like we can say that the connection means if you want to pass something from parent to child, so we can use it. So binding practically will describe you after this theory. So for a binding, what we need it, we just make a pointer that is reference to that data. Okay, so whenever we have a state property and then we can access it using the binding on the child view, we are making the binding. On that case, we need to pass it as in a dollar sign, with the dollar sign. So dollar is a prefix you passing the data on from the state property using that. Okay, so that's the way you can use it. Means it allow to child view to read and modify a value without owing it. So that's the way we can use it in our Swift UI. So I will describe you. Let's see the example for that. Okay, so let's see practical of state and binding differences. So for that I am just making a one view here, and for that I am adding a new file inside the view. That is, I'm giving the name to that is binding view. That's simple. Okay, so once this file be created, our purpose is that first we have to create the state and then we have to bind the value. So we'll see here we see the two examples how it will work with the binding. So for that, first view is we will the parent view I will create, and the second view is the child view I will create. Okay, so let's see the example of the binding here. For this I need to create a two views. One is the parent and other is the child view. I think it's the most common example. I will explain you in two ways. Okay, so how we can bind it. So first, on the parent view we always use the static state data. Okay, so first we need to make a state variable here, and that is state I'm using as a private var, and that where be I'm making a parent text. Okay, this is our parent text, and this is a string kind, and I'm giving the name to this hello binding. Okay, so this is the simple approach, and here uh, this is I'm making a parent, and here inside this how we can concat it with simple make a bracket, and then this is your parent text. Okay, so that's the way you can concat here, and here just making as an is a parent. Okay, hello binding. So you can see here it's very simple. Now after that we have to call the child view. So better we can make a stack for both, so we can represent uh, both text as well as child view. Okay, so this work we need to put it inside the vstack. That's simple. Okay, so now we have to create a child view here for a binding. For a child view, just simple, I'm just making a struct detail view or child view. You give the name. This is our view, and that view I'm using a binding inside. Okay, so you can use at a binding, and that binding should be a where this is your text well, and whatever is the binding you will do, um, it comes here, and here we have a body like above, and here I'm putting some view the same, and we return what we have to return. Okay, if you want to make a text field or any text, you should be returned there. Okay, at this time I'm using some static form, then we can use the counter also. So this is our static field here I'm using, and for this, as you know that for a stat text field we always use the state variable and then we'll pass it. Okay, so this comes from a parent view to child view. Okay, so here enter text, and whenever you do any binding here, this is a text, and that binding should be in a form of your dollar and text well. Okay, if you're not using this dollar, it means it create an issue. Okay, so this is a simple binding, and here if you go for the detail view, you can see that, so it showing you that this is the bindable. Okay, and when you say that this is the text well, so it means it should be the binding string. So it means you are passing the value here, and that value I'm using as a parent text. Okay, so that means you can see this is, it comes here as in the hello binding. So that means this is a very simple example, you can see anywhere. Yeah, this is the binding view. Now I'm using one more example for how we can do the increments with the counter with the uh, parent to your child. Okay, so let's see the second example for this. Okay, so let's see one more example here for this. uh, for that I'm using one more state, and that should be a private where, and this is our counter, that is the 0. Okay, so I'm making this counter be 0, and same, I'm not using anything be here, just hide this and also hide this, make it as a text, and you can say this is a counter colon, and this is your counter you have to show. Okay, so if you want to go for the font, bigger font, so as I told you, you can use that. Okay, headline, oh sorry, it is, we can use it. Okay, slash for concatenation, so it should be a counter 0. So here in the detail view, what we needed a one more binding, and that always at that I'm making the counter again, and you can use any variable, not the same name, it depends on you. And for this hide the text field, I'm using the button, so for that I'm doing increment for this, and that button I'm making as an increment button, and that increment button make it counter, plus equal to 1. So that means it can increment it by 1. Okay, so that's the way you can use that counter. And yeah, you have to call that detail view, but here you can see that it's showing you the two bindings because of we already have the previous binding here. You can see this counter and text field. So I'm not using this, I'm using the counter, and here also the counter. Okay, so for the detail view you have to pass that counter. So you can see that here it's showing only the one, that is the counter. So I am passing the dollar counter. Okay, and when we are passing the dollar counter, it means we can see that it works or not. Okay, so here you can see that it's showing you the button, so now it can increment it accordingly. Okay, so this is the way it works, like from the parent to the child view. So I will show you the more live examples for that, but for now you just understand that how we can bind the data from the parent to the child view. So we'll explain you more on uh, for the API calls and rest of the things. Let's see. Hi, so we start with the basic API call. So here, one thing we understand for the Swift UI, that for the basic API call we need to use few things that is important. The first important class is a URL session, and beside that, you know, the guard and async await. So these things first we understand the guard. So the guard is a statement in a Swift, including within the Swift UI context, and it is used for early exist from a scope. So this is it comes from the Swift, and we are using it in Swift UI. Okay, so that means if whenever we are doing any specific conditions, it is not met, that means it is particularly useful for unwrapping the optionals and ensuring that certain prerequisites are in the place before proceeding with the main logic. Okay, so it means maybe something null is coming, so it guard can make it safe. So guard condition, and then we have a else condition, it comes to the else condition. Okay, it look like with a try catch, but try is not so safe, guard is safe here. Okay, so that's the way we can work with guard. So here a small example be like, if we have any user and we use the guard, it is the let, and whatever be the unwrapped user, you can use this user if it exists, otherwise it is not exist. So that's very simple, so you are using this. So just like here you have to call for the API, that is API response exists, otherwise else condition we have to return. Okay, so I will describe you this. And also, because of when we do the synchronous or asynchronous both ways, so here we have to use, because of sometimes data loading is too much or we have a lot of data. So the best good practice always be, you have to use the async and await. So this is a programming pattern that simplify the asynchronous code. It means it allowing it to be written in a style that looks behaves like a synchronous code, and it declares a function that always returns the promise, while the await keyword poses the function execution. Okay, so that means it execute it pauses the execution till we get the final responses, or if there is an issue, that means error handling also. So this is the way we can use async await. I think in every programming language we are using this. So three things first you need to understand, and then we'll discuss about the URL session. Okay, now once we're done with the sync await or a guard, we have a URL session. So for the URL session, it's a simple and single line statement in the Apple side, that is an object that coordinates the group of related network data transfer tasks. So whenever you use any network data, transfer, so that means either we have to send or we have to get. So all CRUD operations, so that means we are using the URL session classes and related class provides an API for downloading the data from and uploading the data to the endpoints indicating by the URLs. And your app can also use this API to perform background downloads whenever your app isn't running. Okay, so that's the way we have to work. And if you already familiar with the Swift, we have worked with that. So URL session delegate we have, URL session task delegate we have, so that is. And if you go for the sessions, so that means the second thing is that we need to use that session here. So the task within a given URL session share a common session configurations object, so which defines connection behavior like the maximum number of simultaneous connections to make to a single host. Okay, so that means how many connections we have built for this, means how many sessions we have on that. And URL session has a singleton shared session. For the basic request, it is not as a customizable as sessions you create, but it serves as a good starting point if you have very limited requirements. Okay, so I will describe you practically what is that exactly. So here you need to understand three kind of configurations. Number one, default session behavior. Okay, so here are three kind of session configurations we have. Number one, the default session behaves much like a shared session. Number two, ephemeral sessions that are similar to the shared sessions but don't write a caches cookies on credential to the disk. And third one is a background session. So according to your API call, you have to decide that which session we need it for your app or required for your app. So first we discuss about the default practically also. And within the sessions you create a task that optionally uploaded data to the server and then retrieve data from the server. That's simple because of we need it. For that we are using NS data object. So here we have a four type of tasks: data tasks, send and receive data using NS data objects. Data tasks are intended for a short often interactive request to the server, upload task and download task. Okay, so these things we need to understand. And we have a session delegate also, so that means we have to check that authentication fails, data arrives from the server, data become available for a caching. So a lot of things under that task in the session also share a common delegate object. Okay, so here as per understanding we need it. In most of the network APIs, the URL session API is highly asynchronous. It returns data to your app in one of the three ways. If you are using a Swift, you can use the method marked with the async keyboard. Okay, we need a data, we have a download, we have a async sequence, for a lot of things with there that I will describe you practically one by one all. So here if you need to understand that, that means you need three things, that is called the URL session, then we have a shared, then we have a data. Okay, so three things that's very important for the practically. So that is URL session, shared and data. So that already we discussed about that. So how we can use it and how we can achieve it, so let's see. But three things for a for a data, that means data, which kind of data we are fetching, so that's from the URL, and what we are getting the response. And using the guard we are using it, and async and await task we are using for that. Okay, so that's the way we have to work here. So let's see very simple example how we can fetch the data using API in Swift UI. So before we start the practical, one more thing we need to discuss, that's called a dispatch queue. So an object that manages the execution of the task serially or concurrently on your app's main thread or on a background thread. So we are using that dispatch queue here. Okay, so I will explain you practically, but in a Swift UI we can say that it is used for managing the execution of the task either synchronously or asynchronously on various threads. So it is a fundamental part of the Apple's Grand Central Dispatch. Okay, we can say it is a GCD framework, so that's important. So whenever we do a simple application API call or a synchronous call for the multiple loads of data, heavy loads of data, so we are using this, and we have to go for of the main queue. So means whatever be the our serial queue be, it is our main queue in which we are fetching our data or sending our data. Okay, so it's look like a dispatch dot main dot async kind of this. Okay, so three kind of way we are using. Number one is dispatch dot main, number two, or we can say it is async form, number two for the global ones we are using, and number three for customization. So three kind of dispatch queue we are using here. Okay, so as discussed, that means we have a three kind of ways to work with the dispatch queue. Number one means we have a dispatch queue for with the main async, we have a global, and number three we have a our customize. Okay, so whatever be the requirement, according to that we have to work like this. And one more thing, whenever you use this URL session share data or a data task, that means we are using the three things here: number one data, number two response, and number three error. So data, that means whatever be the data we have. Response means according to, I mean, status code or whatever be, it comes here. And error, whatever be the issues with the API, it comes here. So according to that we can show the responses to the user. Okay, so here that means the data is the raw bytes returned by the server. Responses, that means it is a URL response. Metadata about the request means whatever be the status codes, header and MIME, and whatever be the error comes. Okay, so let's see a very simple examples how we can fetch data. And then we see that with the async task, then we see that with the model, and then we use view model. Then will means our target is to cover the view model, so we will see that all these things, and then we go for the MVVM approaches once you done these points. Okay, so let's start.
body, then IDs, and show it in the list that we'll see on the next. But there is something more about the APIs. First, we discuss on that. Okay, so let's see step by step all the things. Okay, yeah.
Check that our desired output and we fetch the JSON in a single string. So now how it will work, as we discussed before, if you want to make it async, means it can run parallelly if there are a lot of data. Because of here we have a single post, so it's very easy to call that. But if I want all the post, so at that time the load is too much on the UI, so better we can make it a sync call on that. So for this what we needed, we need to make it a task, and under the task we are calling this as a fetch JSON, and also we have to make it await, and here we'll make it async. Okay, so according to this it will work, and we can fetch the data asynchronously. Okay, so parallelly or behind the scene it can load the data on that case. So see, asynchronously. So sync is, that means on the UI side you can call it or fetch that JSON, but there's a lot of data, so better it is a good practice to make it async APIs call. Okay, now we'll see how we can use this data if we will call multiple posts there. So how we can fetch the data and how we can make a J array and show it into the list without a model. Then we'll see how we can do it with the model, and then we go for the MVVM approaches. So these all be the basic things we need to learn. Okay, as we have tested last time that how we can create await and async, we have used that. But now if I want all data and in a form of list, so what to do, means without any model how we can fetch it, and then we'll see with the model how we can fetch it. So these are, see the differences. So here I just want the post, not a single post, and for that what to do, I will hide all these. Let JSON data to this else condition. It means under that uh, I will create an direct array of this, because of at this time that object be converted in a form of array. Okay, so we'll see that what is the array for this. So let's see, this is your JSON array, and that JSON array uh, I will create it for, I mean by the JSON object, and that JSON object as we want a kind of a string, and that should be any. Okay, so that's the way you can uh, create it. And one more thing it want, this is closed here and this is closed here. Okay, we'll see. So this is the let form, and then once it's done we have to pass it under that array form. Okay, so for this I need a dispatch queue, and that dispatch queue the same we are making as in a main async, and under that we put some code on that. So means we have to pass that JSON array in some array on our side. So for that what to do, you can create at state, and that state is you can say that private where post, and it should be the same whatever we created, means any kind of a string array. I think all are familiar about this, otherwise I will describe you. For this means you can fetch any kind of post data be here, sorry, it is a array form. Okay, so it should be like this. So this is the way we have created the post. We have our JSON data, and here we are passing that post to our JSON array, sorry, JSON array to our post. So this is the way we can fetch our data here. It's a very simple. So we follow few steps. That means you have to create that post, then I want all the posts, then I created the array, and that array could be is in the form of the post we are passed. That's very simple. Okay, so now here I need to check that where the post is empty or we need the data. So that means if it is empty, then we show the text, and if it is not empty, that means we fetch the value and show it in the form of list. So once the post is an array be on our side, we'll see that if posts are empty or empty is there, yes, is empty. Okay, so you can put anything on the text, say no data. Otherwise we have to go with the else condition, and under the else condition we have to put the list, and that list should be the post, as we have done previously. How we can create the list? If you do not know, you just check that my previous session for this. Okay, so this is the ID. Because of we don't have any ID, we are not using any model here, so it is a self, and once it's done we can say that uh, index in if let title, I mean in the post if you have a title, and that title should be in the form of whatever be the index on that side, and on the JSON side we have a title. Okay, so and that is as a kind of a string we are using. Okay, so this is the way we're doing, and here if already everything is there, so we create a v stack, and under that v stack we have to show the text, and under text we are showing the title. So this is your text title. Okay, so that's the way we are making a very simple approach here, and we'll see if we will check this and run on the device. We'll see what is the result of this, and then we find the other values of the JSON array. Okay, so here you can see that whatever we are fetching the JSON in the form of the list, it comes here. Okay, so if you want to be the separate out the body with this, or you can use one more text, means there be the title with the body or anything else if you find in the your JSON, so it comes here. So I'm only fetching the title here, and it is without any model. So we'll do it with the model and learn how we can do it, and also we'll see the customization. Then we'll see that more about the MVVM approaches at it is started with this API calls. Okay, so let's see. Model based API call, we need to learn few things like decodable and encodable. So these things that is important, and codable, so these things we need to discuss, but as this video become long, so we'll go for the second part of this API call with the models. So thank you so much for this.